The spinal cord doesn't just connect your brain to your body, it's also a powerful processing center, making split-second decisions that keep you alive and moving before your brain even knows what's happening. It constantly integrates incoming signals, controls reflexes, and coordinates complex movements, often without ever needing the brain's input. Sensory information enters the spinal cord through the dorsal roots, and motor commands exit through the ventral roots, forming a direct pathway between stimulus and response. This setup allows for lightning-fast reflexes that protect you before you're even aware of what's happening. In this video, we'll explore how the spinal cord functions as a control center, how it integrates neural signals, how reflex arcs work, and how sensory and motor pathways create quick, automatic responses. By the end, you'll understand not just what happens when you touch something hot, but how your body reacts in an instant. The spinal cord has two main functions in maintaining homeostasis. The first is propagating nerve impulses, and the second is integrating information. So let's talk about that first way. The first way the spinal cord is going to maintain homeostasis is through nerve impulse propagation. The white matter tracks that we learned about in the last video act like highways for these impulses. Ascending tracks are going to carry sensory information from the body to the brain, keeping the central nervous system aware of changes inside and outside the body. This sensory input is then processed or integrated by interneurons in the gray matter of the spinal cord and brain. So the gray matter is where that incoming and outgoing information is received and processed, and then what happens is it goes from there to motor commands. So whatever it decides, those motor commands are going to then travel back down through descending tracks, carrying the signals from the brain to the skeletal muscles and other effector tissues. Somatic pathways control voluntary skeletal muscle movements, while autonomic pathways regulate smooth and cardiac muscles and glands. Somatic motor neurons are always excitatory, which means they are going to cause contraction. Autonomic neurons, however, can be excitatory or inhibitory depending on whether they're part of the sympathetic or parasympathetic divisions. While these tracks send information up and down the spinal cord, some reactions don't even wait for the brain. That's where spinal reflexes come in. So that second way that the spinal cord is going to promote homeostasis is by acting as an integration center for these reflexes. What is a reflex? A reflex is a fast, involuntary, predictable response to a stimulus. Reflexes are the simplest type of neural circuit, allowing the body to respond instantly without conscious thought. A reflex is produced by a reflex arc in response to a particular stimulus. Some reflexes are innate, meaning you are born with them, like pulling your hand away from a hot stove, while others are learned or acquired, like those you gain when you are learning to drive, like, for example, being able to stop quickly in an emergency. Somatic reflexes involve the contraction of skeletal muscles, while those autonomic or visceral reflexes generally are not consciously perceived. They involve the responses of smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and glands. So this is going to work to control functions that we don't think about, like heart rate, digestion, urination, and defecation. Every reflex follows a predictable pathway called a reflex arc. It includes a receptor, sensory neuron, an integration center, a motor neuron, and an effector. So let's take a closer look at each one of these steps to see what happens. So first we're going to have a sensory receptor. This sensory receptor is going to detect a stimulus or change in the internal or external environment, and it's going to respond to it by generating a graded potential. If this potential is strong enough to reach threshold, it will then trigger an action potential. This action potential is going to be sent through the sensory neuron that is connected to that sensory receptor. So the sensory neuron is going to carry the signal from those sensory receptors to the gray matter of the spinal cord or brainstem. And this is going to be the integration center. So this integration center is found in the gray matter of the central nervous system. And in the simplest type of reflex, the integration center is a single synapse between a sensory neuron and a motor neuron. This type of reflex is called a monosynaptic reflex arc. This is where the sensory neuron synapses directly onto the motor neuron. A classic example is the patellar reflex, where tapping the patellar tendon stretches the quadriceps, triggering a contraction that extends the leg. From the integrating center, we will then go to the motor neuron. The motor neuron is going to carry impulses that are triggered by that integrating center out of the central nervous system to the effector. And the effector is going to be the responding organ, which could be a muscle or a gland. If it's skeletal muscle, then the reflex is referred to as a somatic reflex. If it's smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, or a gland, then it's an autonomic reflex. We talked about monosynaptic reflex arcs, but most reflexes are polysynaptic, meaning that they involve one or more interneurons. A classic example is the flexor or withdrawal reflex. If you step on something sharp, sensory neurons activate interneurons that cause your leg to withdraw, while simultaneously coordinating opposing muscles for balance. Let's take a closer look at 4 important somatic spinal reflexes: the stretch reflex, the tendon reflex, the flexor or withdrawal reflex, and the crossed extensor reflex. The stretch reflex causes contraction of skeletal muscle, the effector, in response to being stretched. This type of reflex is both monosynaptic. Remember, this is where the sensory neuron synapses directly onto the motor neuron. And it is also ipsilateral, meaning sensory and motor impulses stay on the same side of the spinal cord. Stretch reflexes can be elicited by tapping on tendons attached to muscles at the elbow, wrist, knee, and ankle joints. The patellar reflex or knee-jerk reflex is an example of this type of reflex. Let's talk about how a stretch reflex works. Okay, so first we have the receptors. If we have slight stretching of the muscle, this is going to activate muscle spindles, which are specialized sensory receptors that detect changes in muscle length. In response to being stretched, the sensory neurons that are attached to those sensory receptors are going to then send impulses to the spinal cord. And now we're in the integrating center in the spinal cord, that gray matter, where the sensory neuron is going to synapse directly with the motor neuron. Now the motor neuron is going to send the signal from the spinal cord back to the same muscle. The axon terminals of the motor neuron is going to form neuromuscular junctions with that skeletal muscle fiber of the stretched muscle. And then we're going to have acetylcholine released by the nerve impulses that are going to be generated. And when acetylcholine binds, this is going to trigger contraction in the stretched muscle or the effector, which is going to relieve the stretching. The tendon reflex protects muscles and tendons from excessive tension by causing muscle relaxation before muscle force becomes so great that the tendons might be torn. Like the stretch reflex, the tendon reflex is ipsilateral. When too much force is applied to a tendon, the sensory receptors, which are called tendon organs, send signals to the spinal cord. So let's take a look at how the tendon reflex works. The tendon organ, those sensory receptors, are going to sense changes in how much tension is being placed on the muscle. When that tension increases enough, the receptor is stimulated and reaches threshold, which is going to then send the signal through the sensory neuron, which will direct that signal to the spinal cord. Now, in the integrating center, the sensory neuron is going to activate an inhibitory neuron that synapses with a motor neuron. The inhibitory neurotransmitter is going to inhibit or hyperpolarize the motor neuron, which is going to then generate fewer nerve impulses. This is going to cause the effector, that muscle that was triggered, to now relax and relieve excess tension. With this reflex arc, The greater the tension on the tendon organ, the more frequently these inhibitory impulses are sent to the motor neurons. This inhibition reduces stimulation of the muscle that's generating excessive tension, causing it to relax. In this way, the tendon reflex protects both the muscle and the tendon from potential damage due to too much force. Now note that the sensory neuron from the tendon organ also activates an excitatory interneuron within the spinal cord. This interneuron stimulates motor neurons controlling the antagonistic muscles. So while the tendon reflex causes the contracting muscle to relax, it simultaneously triggers contraction of its antagonist, helping stabilize and protect the joint. And this is where the flexor or withdrawal reflex comes in. Let's talk about the flexor or withdrawal reflex. This reflex is a polysynaptic reflex and works as follows. If you step on a tack or something sharp, a piece of glass, that's going to stimulate the receptors of a pain-sensitive sensory neuron. This sensory neuron is going to then generate impulses which are sent to the spinal cord in that integrating center. In that integrating center, that sensory neuron is going to activate several interneurons, and those interneurons are going to activate several motor neurons. Acetylcholine will then be released by those motor neurons, causing the flexor muscles in the thigh, which are going to be the effectors, to contract. This produces withdrawal of the leg, so you pick your leg up off that sharp object you just stepped on. This reflex is protective. The flexor reflex, like the stretch reflex, is ipsilateral. Remember, that means that the sensory and motor impulses enter and leave on the same side of the spinal cord. But when you step on a tack, something else happens. You start to lose balance as your body weight shifts to the other foot. In addition to triggering the flexor reflex that pulls your injured foot away, those same pain signals also activate a crossed extensor reflex that helps you stay upright and balance. The crossed extensor reflex works as follows. So you step on that tack, and that is going to stimulate the sensory receptors of a pain-sensitive neuron in your foot. And let's say you step on it with your right foot. So you step on it with your right foot, that is going to stimulate those sensory receptors in that right foot. This is going to send that information through the sensory neuron to the spinal cord, where it goes to the integrating center. And the sensory neuron is going to then activate several interneurons in that gray matter. These interneurons are going to synapse with motor neurons on the left side of the spinal cord, which allows the pain signals to cross to the opposite side. The interneurons excite motor neurons that innervate extensor muscles. Acetylcholine is going to be released by the motor neurons, causing extensor muscles in the thighs, which are going to be the effectors of the unstimulated left leg, to contract, producing extension of the left leg. So when you withdraw your right leg, this is allowing your left leg to support the body as the other leg has withdrawn. The crossed extensor reflex is a contralateral reflex arc. Sensory impulses enter one side of the spinal cord, and motor impulses exit on the opposite side. Together, these reflexes form the foundation for everything from posture to protection. Clinically, reflexes can also tell us a lot about nervous system function. Reflexes can also be graded based on response strength. Hyporeflexia, which is reduced reflex response, may indicate peripheral nerve damage or lower motor neuron lesions. Hyperreflexia, which is an exaggerated reflex response, often points to upper motor neuron lesions or spinal cord injury. These patterns help clinicians assess spinal cord and neural pathway function. Understanding spinal physiology and reflex arcs gives you a real appreciation for how efficient the nervous system is. Those split-second reactions that keep you balanced, protect you from harm, or help you move smoothly all depend on these tightly coordinated circuits. Grasping these concepts now builds a solid foundation for topics like motor control, neurophysiology, and what happens when these systems are disrupted by injury or disease. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you never miss out on new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.